Natasha, I want to start on a more personal anecdote with this. You are from Ukraine, Crimea. You said Crimea, correct?
Crimean.
Okay, can you kind of, for those who don't know, can we talk a little bit about that? Explain. You are from Ukraine, but talk about a little bit of Crimea. I know there was an annexation, stuff like that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Crimea, and I was actually born and raised in Soviet Union. So the country of Ukraine was a part of Soviet Union. And then when Soviet Union collapsed, the territory of Crimea was within the Ukraine. So what I remember growing up is that Ukraine I always considered my home. I don't speak Ukrainian well. I speak Russian. Russian is my mother tongue, but I always considered myself Ukrainian. I had a Ukrainian passport, and we learned Ukrainian history and literature in the language in school. So I considered that also my culture, along with Russian culture. But then in 2014, Crimea was annexed by Russia and became Russia. Of course, it's not recognized by U.S. and most of the world, but it is what it is.
So that Crimean Peninsula, sort of when the Soviet Union crashed, that was you knew Ukraine as your
Yes,
you were
yes.
Ukrainian. Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I went to Kiev on multiple times, to get my United States visa to United States Embassy in Kyiv. And I just love the city. And now the city that I know and love, and the people that I know and love that live in that city, is being invaded as we speak.
Yeah, and I want to know a little bit about, with Ukraine being your country and when Crimea was a part of it and things of that nature, what was it like growing up there? Beautiful country, I'm assuming. And so was it a great childhood, in terms of the area you were in?
I'm kind of biased, but I think Crimea is the most beautiful piece of on earth. And it's just beautiful landscape, Rocky Mountains going down to the beautiful Black Sea, and all the palaces of royalty of last century were built there. Just beautiful, beautiful country that I love. And Ukraine is also as beautiful as I could remember. And I travel there every year, so it's hard to see that beauty being destroyed.
And so that leads me to, when did you come to the United States? How was that process? What led you here?
Okay, so I came to study at a college. It's Kentucky Christian University in Eastern Kentucky. So I came on a student visa in 1997. So it's been a while. And then I just stayed. The United States gives an opportunity for international students to get a working visa after they complete, college. So I took advantage of the legal immigration process, and I just got visas, stayed here, worked, finished my education obviously, and worked. And I just loved it. I love the people, and I just stayed in Kentucky.
And Louisville now. So
Yeah.
How did we get to Louisville? What brought us to Louisville, and what's it been like here?
It was work. I was able to find an organization that was helping orphans in Ukraine, and that's clearly my passion and the heart for these hurting children. So the organization that I was working was headquarters in Louisville. So that's how I moved, and I moved in 2000. So, and then I just stayed.
I want to kind of shift to your organization. So, tell us the name of it, and I also want to know, how did that come about? And, what are some of the previous work y'all have done as well? I know you're there right now, and we'll get into that, but tell me a little bit about your organization, how it came about, and some of the work y'all have done.
Okay, well, we started actually in Crimea. And in the early 90s, when Soviet Union collapsed, and there was such a phenomenon as street children. They were everywhere. They would be running away from orphanages, or this disintegration of the family, their fathers would be drinking or abusing them. So there were a lot of children living literally on the streets, in the basements of high-rise apartment buildings, and the economy and the social services right after the collapse of Soviet Union was not, really, they were not good or able to contain that phenomenon. So lots of local Christians would just literally just make say, a bucket of soup and take it to a street corner and just feed those kids. So that's how our ministry started. We actually had several foster homes, a group children's home where we would put the orphans into loving care, and we had a children's center where all these kids of different ages could come and just wash up, be fed, sometimes help with homework. So all that work for the at-risk, neglected, and abused children started in Crimea, actually, as I said, in about 30 years ago. And now with the war in Ukraine, we obviously now focus on what is going on in the eastern border. And now it's all over the country. So we have partners on the ground that work in different places, trying to help all the hurting people there.
So it started kind of focused on youth and at-risk youth, but understandably now you guys are, anyone that needs help, you're there to help.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Iman, just to kind of follow what our first passion to at-risk children, we do support a children's home in eastern Ukraine, in the city of Mariupol, and they house about 30-40 children, ages from 6 to 18, and that's kind of what we also continue to do.
So in addition, yeah.
In addition, gotcha. Yes. We have like so many things that our partners are doing on the ground, and children's home is one of them. One
of the things that I can only imagine that we spoke, to give background, we spoke to a student yesterday, University of Louisville, who his parents are in Kyiv right now. They can't get out. There's no money in terms of they can't get to banks. They can't leave the country unless you're in a car.
Yes.
So, I can only imagine for you, I kind of want to know, and take your time on this, but what does it feel like to you to see your country that you love in this situation right now? I know Crimea, you grew up as a Ukrainian, you speak Russian, whatever it may be, though. To see that friendly thing shift now, what's it like to see your country that you know and love going through this?
It is absolutely horrible. What I receive on a daily basis, my phone is blasting with messages, with photos and videos, and people sharing their stories. It's obviously the front line, which is in eastern Ukraine, where the war has been going on, is probably the epicenter of all the tragedy, because these are the people that have been pulled into this war for the last 8 years. So it's nothing new for them to hear shelling, explosions, mines are off the road. You cannot get off the paved road. Kids know, the big posters here and there, don't touch the mines, just like the World War II. Which is heartbreaking. All the kids, imagine it, 8 years. It's like a lot of children that already grew up.
So
they didn't have...
Between Russia and, sorry to cut you off, but between Russia and Eastern Ukraine, this is not new for them, right?
Oh, no.
It's just boiling over now.
Yes. It started in 2014. And so that was the only area that was experiencing the war, the eastern Ukraine. The city of Mariupol is the first Ukrainian large city on the Ukrainian side next to the front line. And they're probably about 7-10 miles from the front line. So they can hear everything. And the children, as I said, children that live there, they've experienced that. That's their childhood, to hear the explosions in the background, sometimes less, sometimes more. And people have been living in this state of active war for the last 8 years. Mariupol also received a lot of refugees from Donetsk and Lugansk regions, those that, some people ran to Russia, some people ran to Ukraine. And those people, we interviewed them. I've been to their homes. I heard their stories and what they had to go through, how their houses were blown up, how their neighbors were killed. So these people already living in post-traumatic shock for 8 years. But now, as you said, everything is blown up, and it's not even taken up a notch. It's just nothing that this country has ever seen. It's not just in eastern Ukraine. We talked about that Kyiv has been taken right now. People evacuating, but throughout the country, shortages of food, fuel, prices are going up. and you cannot get banks are open, but you cannot get money out. As you said, people have to stay in long lines for 30 minutes or more just to get a bag of food or to withdraw money from the ATM.
And your team, it's so interesting that you're here in Louisville and you're helping, be a part, and you're in a leadership role for this team, right? So it's interesting that, to see someone in Louisville also, it's a part of our city's kind of there, you're helping lead this up. So, tell me a little bit about, we just talked about food shortages, money shortages, people, I've seen AP images of people, the streets are just packed with cars trying to get out. What are they seeing on the grounds? What have they reported, some of the things that they're seeing? What's it been looking like?
Absolutely. Anybody who could leave, especially if you have small children, people trying to get out. But I have to say that Ukrainian male population is actually very determined to fight. So they send their wives and children out, but they stay in. And we work with Christian churches on the ground, and they all are staying. They open it up as shelters for people. They're filling up, and this is amazing. I understand, those people, they're afraid for their safety and they're fleeing. But all of our team, all of them are staying on the ground and they are helping with what we can. We're trying to give out food packages, create shelter for those people whose houses have been destroyed or shelter. They're just scared. They just want to go somewhere and be comforted. And that's where they go.
Throughout the night or today, have you heard of them shifting focus? Are they maybe heading towards Kyiv now, or do you have people in kind of central Ukraine or over into Ukraine? Because the rest of the country has never experienced something like this.
Well, yes, but unfortunately, imagine 1.7 million people displaced from that, active war territory. So those that had means, relatives, they went further. They went to Kyiv, they went to Western Ukraine. So really, in any city in Ukraine, you're probably going to find a large population of displaced people. It's just the least of the least, the most marginalized people that had no resources to go, to get on a, one full day train ride, right, or so resettle in a city where they don't have any jobs or means.
They had to stay.
Yes, they kind of stayed. So they ran to the closest biggest city, which was Mariupol, and literally the majority of this, the poorest, the loneliest people, the grandmas, at risk single mothers, people with no jobs, that's where they went. But honestly, displaced people are spread out all over the country, and they know, for some of them, it rings very familiar.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I'm getting everything. Have you been able to check in with your team? Of course, they've been dealing with this. We've mentioned this a couple different times. The Eastern Ukrainians sadly have known this, but how is your team feeling watching the rest of the country now experiencing this? This is a full invasion, and I know the willpower of, I've seen the men there speak to different organizations like, we are not leaving, we are happily going to stay. But how is your team feeling, or how are you feeling to see that, okay, I've been used to it here, but I'm watching it happen in every last bit of my country right now, heading towards Kyiv, and we can assume further, what does that feel like to see the whole country being invaded?
It's surreal. And again, it's like a trauma all over again, but like on a different scale, because I watched all this war going on in Eastern Ukraine, Crimea being annexed. I've been grieving what has been happening to Ukraine in the last 8 years. So seeing Kyiv, which is, I thought, there's no way anything would happen to it. Seeing the videos and pictures of the streets that I've been to, in smoke, and seeing all these helicopters and airplanes and the shelling happening, it's absolutely surreal. I honestly think it's just like a nightmare, and we're all gonna wake up, because nobody would believe that this would happen in this day and age. And the scenes from what we've seen, it's like from history books. But I think Ukrainian people always had that freedom spirit. They wanted to stand out for their rights. They were one of the most vocal people seceding from Soviet Union. So they treasure their independence. their freedom, their country. And what is interesting to me is that I see not just ethnic Ukrainians supporting Ukraine right now, but also ethnic Russians who live in Ukraine, who support Ukraine right now, who would fight. People that grew up speaking Russian, like me, but people that would take up the arms and defend their motherland.
For those who are watching, why do people in Louisville care? They should, because you are a woman in Louisville. You're a Ukrainian woman in Louisville. You have a team that's there. But why should they care, and how can they help? That's more important.
Yeah, I think anybody should care because we don't live in a vacuum. We live in one big world that actions of one state affect the other, and it's a domino effect, and we all interconnected. And just as human beings, we need to care what's happening because we know from history that if we stop caring, atrocities and tragedy happen. So yes, absolutely, we have to help in any way we can. You know, the governments do their job, but as citizens, sometimes we feel overwhelmed and helpless. What can we do? We could support Ukraine through donations. And if you know someone personally, organizations like Mulberry working on the ground and helping all the people that lost their dwellings, their homes, their loved ones, you can help them in a very tangible way. Right now, bank systems are working, so we could wire money and send funds to Ukraine right now. I don't know what's going to happen in a few days, but the day is today, and we can make a difference today.
This doesn't seem to be going away in the next 24, 48 hours, right? Unfortunately, does this mean your country is going to continually be invaded?
Well, there is a fear that we don't know what the plans are. Nobody knows. So looks like they trying to take over Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine, which would have tremendous consequences for the country. And I don't know what's next. Honestly, I talk to people. I also kind of ask, my friends and my teammates about that, and nobody wants to even hypothesize because that would send everybody into a state of mind that nobody wants to be in. Right now, everybody is focusing on the present day, what they could do to stay safe and keep their loved ones safe.
Absolutely. And I always end with the same question. I think this was great. Is there anything else you felt that I missed that you want to say about your home country or about what's happening right now? Is there anything else that you felt that you weren't able? You said amazing things, but that you weren't able to get out, or that I didn't ask? That this is kind of your moment now. If there's anything.
Well, I just want to reiterate that we could do something together to help those that are asking for help, and just to support the country of Ukraine in their fight for freedom and for independence, and to fight for their territory. So just to support, if you know someone who's a Ukrainian, show them support, be a caring friend, and just show give a hand to someone who is in trouble.